Welcome back to Corn Civics, everyone. My name is Brian. If this is, the first video I've seen, I'm a high school social studies teacher. I teach U.S. history and law primarily, and I have created this YouTube channel as kind of a way to educate those of us that, maybe have forgotten a lot of our civics or governmental education as we've grown up. Most of us in this country only need to have one semester of government our senior year of high school, and that's some of the only civics education we receive. So this channel is meant to be a place where we'll talk about problems with education, but mainly have tools to inform more people about current events and what's going on in politics. So today's topic, as you see, is who is Kamala Harris? If you have not been paying attention to the news, it came out today that President Biden is going to be stepping down from office in January when his term is up. And so the Democrats have to put up a nominee in place of him in order to oppose Donald Trump, the Republican nominee. So I think a very common question I've received from people today is, who is Kamala Harris? Because as Biden stepped down, he then nominated, or I guess endorsed, I should say, his vice president, who is Kamala Harris. She has been serving as vice president for the past 4 years. And so I want to go in today about who she kind of is, because I think in this country, we don't know a lot about the vice presidents. We know the president really well, and then we kind of know maybe the name of the vice president, but don't really know what they're there for, what their expertise is. So this should be a pretty short little video to go into kind of her background, personal, political, and professional, as well as talk about the statement she released today announcing her candidacy for the Democratic nomination. So let's just jump in, starting with her personal background. So Kamala Harris grew up kind of everywhere. Her parents moved a lot as kids. They grew up in Oakland. Then they moved to Champaign, Illinois. Her parents became, I think, professors at the University of Illinois. Their parents split when she was young, so then she moved back to California, spent some time with her mom in Quebec for a few years in high school and things like that. And then she came back to the United States for college. She attended Howard University, a historical black college university out in Washington, D.C., and she received her bachelor's in political science and economics, and then immediately attended University of California, Hastings, to receive her Juris Doctorate, to become a lawyer 3 years after that. So in 1989 is when she wrapped up her education and was a barred attorney in 1990 in the state of California. Other personal background, she met her husband quite recently, actually, in 2013. Doug Emhoff is his name, also an attorney. And they met because, kind of fun fact, they were set up by friends on a blind date. And that's how they met. You can see he is the gentleman in both these photos with her. And she took on the role as stepmother for his two sons that he had from prior marriage, both Cole and Ella, in that top photo. So that's more of her personal background. And, that may not, matter a ton to you if you are thinking about voting for her, just considering her as president. But it's always important, I think, to know where our candidates come from. Now, professionally, she has a really esteemed background as an attorney. She worked in a lot of prosecutor office and district attorney's office, assistant DA's office in California for about a decade and a half, from the time she graduated UC Hastings until 2004. And then in 2004, she decided to run for the district attorney of San Francisco. And it was difficult. She was against two other people, one including the incumbent, who obviously is really well known, the person that was already the current DA. It's not like the DA of San Francisco stepped down. She just challenged her for the position and ended up winning. She became popular, being really just driven and hard-nosed on issues and kind of being very critical of the incumbent district attorney. And she served in this position until 2011. And in 2010, this is why she leaves the district attorney's office, she actually wins election for attorney general of the whole state of California. This is a position that she had been obviously working up towards the past 20 years of her work as a lawyer. Was finally successful in becoming the attorney general of California. If you don't know what the attorney general does, essentially that is the head attorney, I guess, for the government for that state. So let's say that there's issues that the government needs to prosecute within their state. She is the woman. She is the person that would go to. She's not the one always prosecuting. She has assistants, right, to do prosecute as well. But she's the one that kind of navigates as the leader of all that team, and is really, really crucial for that. And she became widely popular as the assistant or the attorney general. became well known for work on public safety, trying to make environments better for especially homeless communities in California and those that were plagued by the criminal justice system. So she was trying to reform the systems. The three strikes you're out policy that was passed under President Clinton. She was trying to reduce how often those were enforced because they were really troublesome. And most Americans, if you've ever looked at the three strikes you're out policy, it is a very troublesome policy. The gist of it is, if you were ever found guilty of three different felonies like possession of marijuana or some kind of drug, you were sentenced to a long period of time in jail, like mandatorily. And she did not like that. So she was trying to, reform the justice system in that way. But the Attorney General's office in 2010, the start of that, the 6 years she served there, is what gives her national spotlight. Again, this isn't where Americans like you and I may have been to pay attention to her because that's not what we do. But other politicians, this is where they start paying attention to, oh, who's Kamala Harris? And we need to know a little bit more about her, especially Democrats. And so this leads to her political experience. In 2016, she decides that the incumbent senator for California that had served there for 20 years was deciding to step down. And so Kamala had the opportunity, and she almost immediately upon this woman stepping down, within days, announced her own candidacy for office to become a U.S. senator. And she wins. She receives endorsements a few months after this by Barack Obama and Joe Biden, obviously two very, very prominent Democrats that I'd be shocked if you haven't heard of before. And she wins this vote. I think it was like 60+% of the vote, which is pretty dominant in an election. Her main thing she was running on was Trump, if he were to win the presidency, which he does, had ran on very strict immigration policies and reform, and even passed, right, if you remember, he passed a policy that was trying to oust anyone from Muslim majority countries. So if you came from mainly Middle Eastern countries and that's where your home country was and you had immigrated here, even if you had been here for years, he wanted to send you back to those countries. So she ran on the fact that she's going to push back on those policies as much as possible. Obviously, her role is limited as a senator. But this is where she begins getting our attention, right? The average day Americans, is because she becomes a very vocal anti-Trump speaker in the Senate. For the Senate confirmation hearings of his three justices he gets to the Supreme Court, which if you want to know who they are, I have another video on the Supreme Court you should definitely check out. But those three confirmation hearings, she was very vocal about not wanting them on the court because they seemed to be anti-women's rights, especially anti-abortion, as well as a lot of anti-immigration views as well. And she actually votes no for most of those. I think all three of them, in fact, she votes no to confirm them to the Supreme Court, though all three of them do reach that spot. But she was really popular amongst not just people in California, but Americans generally as a senator. And in 2020, she decides that, hey, I have, made a name for myself the past 4 years as a senator. Maybe I should try my shot at this whole president thing. And so she runs in 2020 to become the Democratic nominee to run against Donald Trump in that election. However, she does lose out to Joe Biden, who we know, obviously, the current president is successful, and he selects her as his running mate. And she's served that role since then. She's been our vice president, working on a lot of criminal justice reform as a vice president. She's been quieter, I would say, as a vice president. But recently, as calls for Joe Biden have become more and more, loud, she has become more and more vocal, and that they've actually sent her out to campaign for Biden and her for this next election a lot. She's given a lot more speeches. So that's how we get to where she's at today. Now, going forward, what does this look like? She released this statement today. So Joe Biden steps down from office, says, I am not going to be running for a second term as U.S. president. And and then he says, I want to back Kamala. Harris is going to be our gal. And so Vice President Kamala Harris, releases this statement, essentially announcing her candidacy. I think the part where I will address, this is long, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's the last two stanzas there, where she said, I am honored to have the president's endorsement, and my intention is to earn and win this nomination. Over the past year, I've traveled across the country talking with Americans about the clear choice in this momentous election, and that is what I will continue to do in the days and weeks ahead. I will do everything in my power to unite the Democratic Party and unite our nation to defeat Donald Trump and his extreme Project 2025 agenda. We have 107 days until Election Day. Together, we will fight, and together, we will win. So now, what does it look like for the future? Kamala Harris has received Biden's endorsement, which is massive for her. I would expect that maybe a couple other Democrats will come out. A few other Democrats will come out and be like, hey, I want to earn the nomination, the bid to become the Democratic Party's nominee. The Democratic Party has their convention, just like the Republicans just finished theirs, next month, starting August 19th. And so those 4 days will really be when all these electors that were already pledged to Joe Biden, because we voted for him, the Democrats did, as their nomination, that they will then decide, based on whoever runs, where they're going to vote. Right? Do we want Kamala Harris to be the face of the Democratic Party, which it seems like a lot of senators and representative members and members of Biden's cabinet have already come out and say, yes, we want her. My guess is she will become the front runner. That's why I thought this video would be so important, to give you some context. But if not, they decide to go some other way. Maybe they choose like Pete Buttigieg or Gretchen Whitmer or Gavin Newsom or someone else as the Democratic Party nominee. Then after that, we will know who Trump is up against. This is really unprecedented for an incumbent president to step down. And to do so without like any scandals, right? And Nixon steps down, but that's because of Watergate in history. But this is a very interesting and very unprecedented time. So definitely a time where I'm open to questions, and I have questions myself. So if you are curious, want to know more about Kamala Harris or anything about like the upcoming election cycle, let me know. I will definitely be sure to create a video once the Democrats have selected their nominee about the two candidates, Trump and whoever they choose, and to kind of give you the overview of what their policies are, what they're pushing for, and an unbiased and objective of a view as possible on that, because I think it's really important that we don't show up at the voting booth and just vote red because our parents did, or vote blue because that's all we've done our entire lives, right? Let's try to figure out for ourselves what we want to do. But very unprecedented times, very crazy. Hopefully this video was very helpful for you. If you enjoyed it, drop a like, subscribe. This would be very helpful. I'd love to grow this channel more this year, really get it, hit the ground running. But thank you guys.